Hi everyone, my name is Amber, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my review of The Survivors by Jane Harper. Jane Harper is the author of The Dry, Force of Nature and The Lost Man, as well as The Survivors, obviously, which is her newest book. The Dry was actually turned into a film starring Eric Bana, and it released at the beginning of this month, and I haven't had the chance to watch it yet because I think it only released in Australia, but I'm hoping I can get my hands on it soon because I really want to see it. Jane Harper is one of my all-time favourite authors and I love reading her stuff. I love promoting it as well because her thrillers are always so heartfelt and she does an incredible job with her settings, so I always love to read them, and I think more people should be reading her stuff outside of Australia. I get the impression she's very popular in Australia but not so much in the US and the UK. So I'm not going to say too much about The Survivors because I don't like going into thrillers knowing too much about them, and I don't want to give too much away, just in case you're like me and you like going in kind of not knowing the entire plot. The Survivors is about a man called Kieran who goes back to his hometown in Tasmania with his partner and with his newborn child. So they head back to Kieran's family home, and his father is suffering from dementia. So his mother is looking after his father and is having a bit of a rough time of it. Kieran isn't very well liked in this town because of something that happened when he was a teenager. I'm not going to say what because I think it's better to discover it as you go, especially because what happened then is linked to what is happening in the present day, which is also a mystery, and something awful is happening to these characters in this town. I really enjoyed the plot of this one. It kept me guessing the entire way through. There were a few red herrings thrown in there, and I did suspect the person who was behind a lot of the things that were happening, but at the same time I was suspecting absolutely everyone in this town. I had so many theories, and that's one of my favorite things about reading thrillers, is how many theories I can come up with, even if they are kind of out there and not really what you would expect. It's just something that I have a lot of fun with, which is why I don't like it when thrillers are really predictable, or at least they follow a more linear plot. But Jane Harper does a really good job of writing her plots that focus on the present day and also go back in time and interweaving these different timelines and events. I had a lot of fun figuring out how everything was kind of interlinked and how the past was affecting the present day. Another thing I really like about Jane Harper's books is how they're always set in a small town, and I come from a small village myself in the UK, and I can attest to the small town drama that goes on in Jane Harper's settings. I love how the main characters always have like cousins and childhood friends and stuff who come up out of the woodwork, and they either become suspects or they help out the main character perhaps. I think Jane Harper does a really good job with this, and that is also the case for The Survivors as well as her previous books. There is always so much drama in her small towns and I can't get enough of it. I do think that the plot of The Survivors feels a lot more like The Lost Man than The Dry. I'm not really sure what Jane Harper's plan is with the Aaron Falk series, which is what The Dry and Force of Nature are a part of. They follow this same small town detective, but The Lost Man is clearly set in the same world because there are references to the other books, but Aaron Falk isn't connected to them really in any way, and he doesn't make an appearance. It's more of an Easter egg kind of thing. But like I was saying, I do think that The Survivors feels a lot more like The Lost Man, so I really like the direction that Jane Harper is going in, especially because The Lost Man is my favourite book of hers so far, and The Survivors felt very much the same. While I'm on the topic, I'm going to talk about the atmosphere of Jane Harper's books, particularly in The Survivors. So her previous books are set in the outback, basically in small towns where it's really freaking dry and hot, but The Survivors is very different. It's set in Tasmania during, I don't know if it's a rainy season or during winter, but it's stormy and raining a lot, and even with this, Jane Harper did an incredible job with the setting, and I actually felt like I was in this rainy town in Australia. Settings aren't always something that I pay a lot of attention to, but the settings in Jane Harper's books are always fantastic, and in The Survivors I really got a feel for it. I was feeling chilly and wet and rainy alongside the characters, and she did an incredible job with it. I think the characters' relationships with one another also came into that because they were just so relatable, especially for me. Like I said, I'm from a small town where I know absolutely everyone in the village, or at least know of them, and I think having these relationships in this small town really made the reader feel kind of at home there and feel like they are experiencing what the main character is experiencing. There was also some really interesting caving going on in this book because the main characters keep going into caves for one reason or another, and it's really freaking creepy. I've been caving myself, and that was with a tour guide, and even I found that really creepy, but these characters are going in there by themselves in the dark with no equipment, and while storms are happening and the tide is coming in, and it's so scary. It made me feel really claustrophobic. I really think that Jane Harper pulled off the perfect plot for this setting, or maybe the perfect setting for this plot. I'm not sure which came first to her. Either way, it was fantastic. And then I also quickly wanted to mention the characters. Even though I don't typically read thriller books for the characters, I'm more there for the plot. But I do really like how Jane Harper always puts a lot of thought and effort into hers. Kieran had a really interesting backstory, as did his family, and there were also side characters with interesting backstories as well, even though we didn't really look into those as much as we did with Kieran, because obviously he's the main character. But everyone in this town was so well developed, and they all had a lot going on, and I think that's partly because some of them were part of the mystery thriller plot, in that they were either red herrings or they were involved in some way. And so Jane Harper made an effort to really develop them and give the reader, I don't know, something to connect to and something to read about with them, rather than just saying, oh yeah, there's this character, are they a suspect? They were all really, really interesting, and I really enjoyed reading about the history of the town and their backstories. I really got quite involved and connected to the characters in this town, and also to their relationships with one another, because a lot of them had quite, I guess, intricate relationships going on, whether they were good or bad, positive or negative. They were all connected in some way, and everyone knew about everyone else. And like I said, I loved it. I love the small town setting. I think it's fantastic. Jane Harper is definitely one of my favourite thriller writers, and I would love to do a video, I think, this year talking about all of her books at once and discussing which one I like the most, which ones I would recommend to the most people, and the connections between all of them, because in all of them she manages to pull off a fantastic setting, atmosphere, and the characters are always really, really good. So if you didn't get this from my gushy review, I gave The Survivors 4 stars. Like I said, I didn't want to talk about the plot too much, so I didn't really go into too much detail. I just went into my thoughts because I don't want to accidentally spoil anything for you, because I do think it's best to go into this book knowing as little as possible, so that you can experience the same red herrings and excitement that I did. Like I keep saying, I absolutely love Jane Harper's books. I can't wait to see what she comes out with next. I'm hoping she'll release something in the autumn of this year in Australia, and then I'll be able to get my hands on it early, I hope. Fingers crossed if the publisher approves me. Along with Ruth Ware, I think that Jane Harper is one of the strongest thriller writers out there, and I would highly recommend her stuff, especially The Survivors, which is coming out this month in the US and the UK. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please check out my other videos if you are into adult mystery thrillers or even YA. Please subscribe if you like this one, and I'll speak to you all in the next video. Bye.